This week on the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
Yeah, I mean, so this is going to be a common theme today, I think, but this seems really good with either version of Luke.
I was just going to say, right?
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a podcast focused on tactics and competitive play for Star Wars Legion. Hosted by Kyle Dornbos, Michael Barry, and David Zelenka, with Jay Shalansky, the man behind the glass.
Welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels. My name's Mike, and I am here today with David. Kyle is on a trip, so he's not going to be joining us tonight. How you doing, David?
Doing all right. Surviving. I've been sick this weekend, but I'm looking forward to talking about Legion today.
Awesome. Make sure you're drinking lots of fluids. That goes for everybody.
Yeah. I got my tumbler full of water right here on the desk.
So today we have it's kind of a short agenda, but it's kind of a cool one. So we are starting a new segment that is going to be kind of right after this intro. It's called the Relentless Rangers. And it is with Nima and Brad from Team Relentless, and they're going to talk about some competitive terrain stuff. So we'll jump into that in a minute. The later part of the show, we're going to talk about Cassian Andor.
All right. So for those of you who are paying attention to the news feed coming from Fantasy Flight, they released an article called Rogue Agents, which details all the, or most of the stuff that's going to come in that commander expansion. But it is both a commander and an operative because we get both Cassian and K2 in the same pack.
It's going to be sweet. I can't wait to get into it. Before that, though, let's go ahead and have our first segment of Relentless Rangers. Welcome to our newest segment. We're calling it the Relentless Rangers. And the reason we're calling it the Relentless Rangers is I have here with me today Brad and Nima from Team Relentless. How you doing, guys?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, doing great and ready to talk about some terrain, do some cool stuff.
Awesome. So just to give you guys a little bit of background. It's like Brad and background. Background on Brad and Nima. So both of them are members of Team Relentless. And Brad, you did some of the table design for the LVO Top 8. Nima has done a lot of the terrain and logistics for Kublai Khan or Legion by the Bay. And both of you has been involved in Invader League in some capacity over the last few seasons. So, Brad, could you tell us a little bit about Team Relentless and how that came around to be?
Yeah, so after Adepticon 2019, myself, Casey, known as Garnanana on the Discord, and Michael, known as Screwtape on the Discord, we'd all been talking and doing a little theory crafting before going into Adepticon. And we decided to, we'd all been talking for a while, so we're like, hey, why don't we formalize this a little bit? Because we saw different groups popping up in the community. So we created and founded Team Relentless under the main idea of just being a collection of Star Wars Legion players that are dedicated to success at high levels of competitive play through growth, innovation, and sportsmanship. So the idea was just like, all right, instead of this being an unofficial brain trust to try to figure out what we're doing with Legion, let's work together, schedule practice games together, compare notes, come up with what we can do with the best, what we can do to create the best lists and perform well at competitive events. And moving forward from that, we needed some different perspectives because we were all Empire players on the team. So we started bringing in people like Ben, known as Mbueha on the Discord, who also does content production for us with the Playbook series, which is excellent on YouTube, and you should go check that out. And we also brought in Nima, who is here with us tonight as well, to bring in some Rebel shenanigans into the team. And most recently, we also brought in John Griffin, one of my friends from the Chicago area here, who's also a really strong player and really good at heavies. So we've got a good, well-rounded team to go ahead and schedule, events. We've been doing a lot of work for the upcoming Worlds Tournament at Adepticon this year. And we've been playing together as a team for the first time officially in this recent season of YBTL.
Awesome. And Nima, how did you kind of get involved with the team?
I was contacted by Ben at one point. I think it was after the previous Invader League. Um, I guess they were impressed by my performance in that league, of course. So Ben messaged me and asked if I was interested in joining the team because they, like Brad was saying, it's a very Empire focused team, and they wanted to get insights from players who play other factions. Excuse me, other factions, other lists. Um, and I had interacted with a few of them on the main Discord at some point, and they brought me on, and we've been having a good time.
Awesome. I mean, I know most of the people on your team these days. I mean, you guys are a great bunch, and you're all very good at Legion. I will say you are very Empire heavy. It's interesting that you guys pointed that out.
Very, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you guys gonna add some people that play droids in Republic anytime soon?
Maybe. I know a bunch of us are branching out. I know Nima and myself are also looking pretty hungrily over at Gar. We've been messing around with a lot of saber tank tech and stuff recently, and talking about little like the niche things you can do in that kind of list. And I'm really excited to run a lot of phase 2s. I've got a whole bunch of them sitting in boxes on my hobby desk right now, getting ready to get put together. So
You're one of the lucky ones that found boxes.
right.
Mine actually just showed up today.
Nice.
Yeah, standby tokens at range 3 are pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. So this segment that we're calling Relentless Rangers is going to be about terrain and competitive terrain specifically. There's a lot of terrain out there that looks really cool. Some of it's not viable for competitive Legion. This is going to be centered around competitive terrain and competitive Legion because that's what Notorious Scoundrels is about. So why don't we jump into what exactly do we mean when we say competitive terrain, and why is it important? Who wants to take the first stab at it?
I'll take the first stab at it here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, to expand upon what you already said, competitive terrain specifically is terrain that is thematic, but it's designed with the game mechanics and game function as its primary focus. And then, theme and looking good and kind of secondary. Those are still important. But there's the difference between, creating something that looks amazing. And we've all experienced this on the table sometimes. We have an amazing looking piece of terrain on the table. It's thematic. It looks like it's right out of the movies. And it's just really awkward to play around. To kind of illustrate the difference between aesthetic focused terrain and functional terrain, which the latter is better for competitive play. You have a bunch of different companies and stuff that do work in the area. If you're looking at aesthetic terrain, that's more of the stuff you're going to see that's coming out of like Jim Martin Art and Design, who's done some beautiful, beautiful work that we saw at like Adepticon last year. And I know he had contributed some stuff to a Mimbon board up at NEO, which was hosted there. And then the Terrain Studio, who does Sean Morris there does custom builds of these really gorgeous looking tables, but sometimes they're not the best like for setting up at like a big tournament like Adepticon, because you have to transport that all in there and get it set up, and it has to be work and be balanced and work for the minis. Where then you have companies that are kind of like Legion Terrain and Imperial Terrain, which are a little more focused on that competitive side, where they're creating terrain that is primarily for the function of the game. And one of the bigger differences in there is, it's about size of terrain. It's about sometimes how it looks, little notches and stuff, sizing it correctly so the minis fit in there, and all those kind of little bits jump into creating something that's more functional than aesthetic.
Nima, do you have anything to add to that very thorough explanation of what competitive terrain is?
Yeah. So one way that we commonly subdivide the different types of terrain is they can be broken down into LOS blocking or area or scatter terrain. And you really want to try to have a good balance of terrain that meets these different categories. And I think Brad will cover some of the reasons for this and what the exact distribution of these would be later on. But it's just good to know that you have to think of them in these different terms.
Yeah. So, well, as long as we're kind of on the subject of like different types of terrain, and Brad, you had mentioned terrain that was not easily transportable. Nima, you help run Legion by the Bay, and clearly you guys have to coordinate kind of getting tables there and the logistics of that event. What goes into your calculus when you're kind of figuring out how you're going to put one of these events on and making sure that you have the competitive terrain that you need?
Yeah, so that's one of the probably the biggest responsibility that you have as an organizer, is bringing the correct amount of terrain to the event, and it really is pretty much all on your shoulders. So you need to really plan ahead. It's good to have an idea of how many people you're expecting to actually play in the event. What I like to do is, if you're frequently organizing events, it's good to have um, keep a list of people that you know in your area that are potential terrain suppliers. For example, in our area, I'm in the California Bay Area, and Mitrokin, some of you guys may know him on the Discord. He has some beautiful terrain, and I've been able to tap him a few times to help with RPQs and other local events. He's got really beautiful stuff, and it's important to keep things organized. You generally want people to bring you terrain in self-contained boxes. So each box that's being delivered to you can serve as a single table's worth of terrain. So you're not mixing and matching different people's terrain that they own, and that really helps a lot with setup and tear down. It makes things go much faster. You're not going to lose pieces. You won't have people yelling at you like, "Hey, where's my scatter terrain?" You're not going to go around chasing after models, and that just really makes the job much easier for you as well. And I think Brad again will cover some things about what kind of terrain you're going to want on the table, and it's when it's pre-organized for you, it just makes your job so much easier. You generally also want to look for a variety of table themes and table densities. So you might have a table that's sort of a jungle theme, and then next to it, like an interior kind of a hangar bay or something like that, and it just helps keeps the event more interesting, so people aren't playing on the exact same table on every single game. And in addition to that, when you're sourcing terrain, it's important to keep the players in mind. People are under time constraints when they're playing in tournaments, and when they have to constantly fiddle with the terrain, it's just going to be a horrible experience for them. So one thing I like to do whenever possible is, I learned this from LVO last year. This was something LJ and Brendan were doing, creating terrain cards that gives people a general definition of the terrain that's on the table, and just makes the pregame and during the game, just makes things so much more smooth for them, that they have a card that they can reference of what the terrain does.
To jump in on that real quick.
Yeah.
I know Mike can probably relate to this too. When you go to a table at kind of event, I've been to huge events like LVO. I've been to small events that are run with like 4 people at a store. When you get to these places and stuff's like predefined, so you don't have to think about it as a player, it's so much easier to be like, oh, well, let's discuss terrain. Okay, everything's laid out on this sheet. Cool. Maybe talk about 1 or 2 edge cases, and then you're good to go.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things I hate the most about a lot of the tournaments that I participate in right now is that like you get there and you're like, I'm an Imperial player and I'm standing across the table from like a Rebel player or a Droid player, and we're looking at all this terrain, and a lot of TOs, though some do what you're talking about, Nima. They haven't said, okay, this terrain is that and this terrain is that, and I'm standing on one side of the table and I'm like, well, this scatter terrain looks like light boxes, and we're supposed to agree on it, right?
Yeah.
And my opponent's playing droids. He would much rather those boxes be heavy cover, you know.
Totally.
And so I think that to some degree, while this is supposed to be a casual competitive game, kind of doing that for the players takes out a very awkward step if both players are kind of looking out for their own self-interest when it comes to competitive play.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a great point. In addition to just speeding up the setup of the game, it takes away any source of argument that could happen, or one of the sources of arguments that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, we're talking about table setup and kind of, the terrain that's going out there, how it's identified. Brad, you've done a lot of stuff in Invader League and at the top 8 of LBO as far as table design goes. Can you give us kind of like a quick calculus on what goes through your mind when setting up a table?
The shortest way I can put it is a lot. There are a lot of variables. I know I gave a little bit of a kind of sneak peek into my brain when I wrote. There was an article I wrote recently for you guys on the blog. If you haven't read that, check that out because there's some cool visual aids and stuff. I talked about designing the top 8 tables at LVO specifically in that. There's a lot to balance, right? Because when you go down and you look at a table, you're given this nice empty mat. Maybe it's a forest theme and you have a bunch of forest terrain. You're like, okay, I have to create an experience for the players here. Something I really like to say and talk about, how important terrain actually is. Terrain's like the third player in every game. Because when you come up to a table, the terrain is going to determine how you're playing that game. If it's intercept the transmissions, what does the area around the middle point look like? Because that's going to be the most contentious spot. If it's recover the supplies, hey, what kind of, is there difficult terrain in the middle? Is there LOS blocking in the middle? Can I infiltrate on this box or not? Is it up on an elevation that isn't like the main play surface? So there's all these different things that the players choose when they do battle cards that you're kind of leaning into when you design the table. And you have to think about that in addition to, making sure people have places to put their minis on the table, because you don't want to like contest deployment zones too much. So you got to think about deployment zones. You got to think about objective placement. You got to think about a balance of terrain. We talked about that a little earlier. Having LOS blocking, scatter terrain. I'll give an example. LOS blocking is like your buildings, your tall trees, your giant rocks, stuff that prevents a mini from being seen, even if it's like a good size mini like an ATRT. And then you have area terrain, which is like your forests, your bogs, your, stacks of moisture evaporator farm. Area terrain can be a lot of different things. That's terrain that you can typically see through, but will provide cover if you're in it, or if you're getting shot through it. And then scatter terrain is like barricades, fallen logs, boxes, small pieces of terrain that get scattered around. And that's typically what you see like groups of infantry cluster behind on the table. So when you design the map, you're thinking about getting that right balance, all those placements from before. You're also thinking about how you want the players to move on the table and like move out of their deployment zones and engage. So you got to think about how far terrain is apart from each other to make sure that you can actually like have fights happen. You got to make sure that you're using LOS blocking terrain to like break up different sight lines. So like a unit of shore troopers that's sitting behind a barricade, for example, has to choose if they're going to cover like one lane as opposed like one lane on one side of a giant tree as opposed to another lane on the other side of a giant tree. So players have to make those decisions. And yeah, it's a bit of a complex thing. I've come up with a couple different systems that I'm excited to talk about in the future, on how to deal with that and cover different parts of it, because it is a lot. And I learn pretty much every time I set up a new table. And I've been doing this for quite a while now because there's just so much that happens every single time.
I gotta say, you guys think about this way more than I do. I just like when I set up a table, I'm like, all right, here's all the stuff, and I kind of like just throw it down, and I'm like, oh, all right, I don't want like a line of sight blocker in the middle of the table, so that's really the only thing that matters, and just shove everything where it goes. So
yeah,
having your guys' viewpoints on this is going to be very enlightening, I think.
Yeah, we've had a lot of experience or a lot of practice with Invader League as well,
Oh, yeah.
where we kind of have to factor in that, maybe 100 or like somewhere between 1 and 200 other people are going to be playing on this table. We got to factor in a lot of things, like what kind of lists are going to be on there. Who do we not want yelling at us?
Yeah,
that's fair. There's definitely some vocal members in our community.
Yeah, right. And it's like, and that's fine, and people are right to be upset about a table. Like, or if they think something's wrong, like, please, like, mention it, because it might be something we miss, and it's just kind of something that comes with the job, right? Like, I volunteer to do that map stuff, and so does Nima. So when it comes down, like, we expect to get feedback, and that's how we get better, and that's how we notice things that we like miss. And then, when FFG drops a giant 6-inch base on us that we didn't know existed before and validates all of our previous work, that's kind of stuff also happens. So it's really about just finding all these different tricks and like finding out what people enjoy as they play. And that's what I really want to do as like a map designer is I want to create a table that you walk away from saying that was an awesome game of Legion. To the point where you're not even necessarily thinking about the terrain, or you're not upset about, like, oh, this is like there wasn't enough LOS blocking, or like there was nothing there, or it was way too dense and I couldn't move my tank. You just want to think about the game, and you don't even want to be thinking about the map. You want to say, like, I had a cool battle on Hoth, or that was a really cool fight on like this, landing pad on Endor, or something. That's what I want players to have when they walk away from a table.
Yeah, so I think one of the large objectives that I have for what we're trying to do with this segment is kind of establish a very good base for what people in the competitive community should expect and kind of lean into as far as terrain goes. I hear a lot of people walk away from a game and be like, oh, the terrain was bad. And my first question was always, well, why was the terrain bad? Like, can you elaborate? And a lot of people are not able to like give a very good reason as to why that is. But I also think it's just because people don't know what a good table looks like.
Yeah, it's a learned art. And if like what we share on the podcast here, in this segment, if the thoughts that we can give out, if people like TOs and players can take that, incorporate that in their own tables, we can elevate the entire community here to a better standard of table everywhere. And the goal would, hopefully we get to a point, maybe this might be unattainable, but where you go to either a large event or a small event and, boards are just great. There's enough terrain. There's a good balance of terrain. People understand the basic concepts like the 1/3 rule, which I'll talk into, designing on an angle, asymmetry, understanding how the different keywords in the games and the different sizes of units will interact with the terrain. Some of these are basic stuff that we can expound upon that will improve play on a table dramatically.
Yeah, and I think one of our goals here is that if we can help the quote unquote lower level events, things like RPQs or I forget what they're called now.
Primes.
Prime Championships.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. It's different every other week. It's fine.
Yeah, right. It's going to be different by the time this airs.
Yeah.
If we can get all these events to have a decent standard of terrain so that players know what they're getting into, or that the events can meet the expectations of the players, that would be fantastic if we could achieve something like that.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think that educating the community and making sure that terrain ends up in a place where people can go to an event and feel good about it. I think that the showing up at a major event or even not a major event, you're committing like a whole day, and to kind of show up and be like, oh man, I brought this sweet rebel army and I can't hide them anywhere. That's a problem, and it's a little bit of a letdown, and it's a bad experience. And making sure that people know how to build a table, I think, is going to be vitally important in kind of taking this game to the next level in the coming years. So I want to thank you guys for coming on and participating in the segment and participating in it in the future. We're going to try and do this, I think, monthly, if you guys are up for that, so everybody can kind of look forward to that. Any parting thoughts today, gentlemen?
I'm excited for some of the future topics we're going to cover, so I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, I am very, very excited that all of these things that I am constantly thinking about and dreaming about and spending way too much mental energy on are now going to have a voice on this segment, so all of you can listen to my internal monologue.
Yeah, and it's not just us having to listen to it.
Absolutely.
Right. He's taking it out of direct messages and floating it onto someplace a little bit more public. Love
There
it.
you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this is the segment Relentless Rangers, and we've been here with Brad and Nima today. We'll see you guys in a bit.
Adios.
So yeah, thanks for having us.
And that was our first segment of Relentless Rangers. We hope you enjoyed it. They'll probably be back. Thinking about doing the segment, I think, once a month, and we'll kind of carry on from there. But David, we've got Cassian Andor. He is the newest Rebel hero, which seems like it probably is wanted and needed at this point. Thoughts?
Well, wanted and needed. Yeah, I mean, if you were tired of running Sabine or Luke or Leia, maybe, yeah. I just think Cassian is just has just a really nice new kind of feature. Just because he's a sniper that doesn't have. Well, he's a sniper with cumbersome. He doesn't have the range limitation anymore. Like that's kind of his biggest new feature, I think. Plus, of course, he brings a suite of new command cards to the table, and we're going to cover all those in just a minute. But he is not just a sniper; he really is another dual mode commander. They're taking another shot at this. They took a shot at this with Jin. It didn't quite pan out the way they thought it was going to pan out, even with the buff to danger sense. It just seems that she's just a little bit too expensive, a tiny bit too expensive for what she does. But I think Cassian's starting out at 90. I think he's right on the money. I think they learned their lesson this time.
I mean, I think he's
pretty good for 90
fine.
points, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that there's a world where, 10 points on the sniper config seems like a steal, but I think that there's a world where you don't have to take it.
Yeah, I think that exists. I think his rifle, or not his rifle, but his blaster pistol is quite fine. He does only surge to hit, which is different than most Rebel heroes. Almost all the Rebel heroes surge to crit. But when we get into the sniper rifle, I think we did get into this last week, actually. There's a reason he doesn't surge to crit because of the sniper rifle and the marksman keyword. It kind of doesn't really work with the marksman keyword for him to surge to crit. It would just be too good.
Yeah, so I guess why don't we go ahead? I mean, we talked about his unit card, I think, the other week, so I guess we don't need to get into his unit card. But so the sniper, which I think was previously spoiled, is 1 to infinity, red black, cumbersome, high velocity, pierce 1, and I think that had already been on the menu. But the interaction there with surge to hit and marksman. I mean, if you can get 2 to 3 aim tokens on him, he basically just says, put 2 hits through cover, pierce 1.
Yeah, that's nasty, especially in infinite range. And I think we kind of bounce around in our head all the ways to get aims on the guy, right? So there's the aim action, there's 3PO, right, with calculate odds.
There's K2SO with calculate odds now, too.
And heck, there's even K2 now with calculate odds.
Yeah.
If you just took K2 for calculate, that's not really a great deal. I think you're better off taking R2 3PO. But K2, there's plenty of other reasons to take K2 other than calculate. That's just one great reason.
Yeah.
K2? Yeah, K2 has teamwork with Cassian also, so K2 could just calculate on himself if he wanted to and pass those aims to Cassian. Yeah,
it seems really good. It's not. We can't see all the upgrades. I don't think on K2 here. Can we? They give us a full spoiler of his unit card.
Yeah, they only really spoiled the unit card.
Okay. Yeah, it's tough to see if he's only got the comms upgrade and whatever other.
It looks like comms armament.
Yeah.
To me.
And It doesn't really look like there's one after that, so maybe he doesn't have any upgrades. I was going to say offensive push would be pretty good on K2, but it doesn't really look like he's got a training slot.
Yeah. On Cassian, though, the thing is, though, if you move, you can't use your rifle because it's cumbersome.
I'm going to be honest. Tactical with teamwork seems really good.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, the aim spawning is real, man. And I mean, Rebels. This is something that Rebels don't really have, which is, sort of the aim multiplication that we see in Empire. So they're kind of, maybe giving us a little bit of that. But I gotta say, like, Rebels. I mean, if our faction identity is anything, it's having these baller heroes, right? Like, we just don't have the best troops. We don't have the best, of anything really, unless it comes to the heroes. And I think the heroes are just such good deals, and they do such dramatic things for low costs. And I mean, maybe that's fitting, right? Maybe that's what the Rebels are. There's a few really uniquely skilled individuals that turn the course of the battle.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, if any faction in this game is going to play like Hero Hammer, it should probably be the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you got to give it to the Rebels, right? Like, there's so many personalities and characters in the faction because of all the stories, right? It's all about the one person in the right place making a difference.
So I got a question for you. Clearly, the tactical combo with Cassian and K2 is really good. Do you think if Han had tactical, that would make him workable?
Yeah. Because that's the obvious comparison, right? Is Cassian K2, and you look at Han and Chewie, right? You sort of look at these two, and Han at 120, Chewie at 95 used to be 110. Like, you can tell they might have been a little conservative because they thought, oh man, the game doesn't have a lot of multiplication here, and teamwork can get pretty crazy, and it really can. Like, I think we were speculating when Han and Chewie first came out. What are the impacts of having 3 dodge tokens on a hero? What are the impacts of having a triple aimed Chewbacca? With all the crit generation and Pierce. But I think they've moved. I think the game's moved on from that level of power. I don't want to say it's power creep. I just think it's just the fact that they needed a broader canvas to work with because they just need more units, right? Because we're going from 2 factions to 4 factions.
Yeah, and I think to some degree, a hero that has like a 2 to 4 dice pool, like, can have as many aims as it wants. It doesn't really measure up to a like 8 to 9 die shore unit with 4.
You're right. It's got a ceiling.
Yeah.
It's not even comparable to a fire supported shore with scopes type shot.
Yeah, absolutely. So, shall we get into these sweet command cards?
Heck yeah.
Okay. So,
You
where do you want to start? Okay. All right. So Crackshot has already been revealed. We talked about that earlier on, I think, the last cast or one before that. It all gets kind of crazy in my head. Let's start with Last Stand, which is his 2-pip.
All right.
And Last Stand reads, first of all, I would just like to point out, I looked at the artwork and I legitimately thought this was a photo. When I first saw it. So props to the artist. It's amazing. So this is Cassian Andor and 1 trooper. When Cassian Andor issues an order to a commander or operative unit, that unit gains Indomitable and gains 1 aim, 1 dodge, or 1 suppression token for each wound token that unit has up to 3.
Dang.
So Indomitable is the keyword the Wookiees have, right?
Yeah, that's the Wookiee red rally dice keyword.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, I mean, so this is going to be a common theme today, I think, but this seems really good with either version of Luke.
I was just going to say, right? Like, okay, my Luke has, my operative Luke has, 4 wounds on him or whatever, and maybe is suppressed a lot. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and throw Last Stand on Luke, and that Luke is going to have red rally, and he's going to get tokens for each wound token he has, up to 3. So I guess the advantage here is that it's a 2-pip. So it's not fast, but still, like, that's really strong and defensive.
Yeah, I mean,
I love it though. Like, throw 3 dodges on Luke. That's fantastic. It's basically just like, I'm gonna blunt, any one attack that's coming my way, and then leap in there
do you
because
need
I have
it to be
Indomitable.
if you have 3 dodge tokens? Like, probably not, right?
Yeah, they're probably not going to shoot you.
Yeah. I mean, and theoretically, you can throw 6 dodge tokens down with this. Like, I mean, I don't know if like
That's
I
true.
guess Cassian has no way to like give his order out to somebody else. So it's got to be him and somebody else. But
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
Cassian doesn't have a relay. Yeah,
but like you can also like if you do this on him and K2, like you get the dodges and names replicate, right?
yeah, because they teamwork each other.
Yeah.
Oh snap! Okay.
like that's also just. I mean, like
Woo.
Luke aside, like that's really good.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Wow. Now, I guess for Cassian, it really is the last stand because his defense dice are not very good. But like on any other unit that has a strong defense dice, like Luke, say, or Sabine, like that's pretty nutty. Especially Indomitable. Like, can you imagine like a box grab that goes horribly wrong? Well, I'm just gonna last stand it, and now Sabine has a million dodges and she has Red Rally, so she's just gone, man.
Yeah, I think Cassian really changes the game on recover the supplies if you're playing like Cassian Sabine.
Yeah, Cassian Sabine seems very strong with this card, especially.
Yeah, and I think the last card we're going to talk about is probably even better when it comes to recover is in box grab shenanigans. But
heck yeah. That's a good point about those tokens duplicating with teamwork. I hadn't thought of that before. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's. I mean, like I guess you throw an aim, a dodge on both, and they both get an aim and a dodge. Because I'm going to be honest, if you get multiple dodge tokens from the same effect, it only teamworks once, right?
I think so. Yeah, they get all the procs one time.
Yeah, but like still, it's a lot. Yeah, I mean, you're essentially if you throw an aim and a dodge down on each, they'll end up with 2 aims, 2 dodges, assuming that they each have 2 wounds. So,
yeah, they duplicate each other.
Yeah, so that's really good.
Phew, that's a lot of tokens.
It is a lot of tokens, and he gets the 1 suppression token to fuel Danger Sense if he wants it.
Yeah, they get the suppression to put the Danger Sense up.
So that's pretty good as well. All right, so let's take a look at Volunteer Mission.
Okay.
Also some pretty sweet artwork. This is Cassian Andor and 2 troopers. When Cassian Andor issues an order to a commander, operative, or special forces unit, that unit recovers, gains Danger Sense 1, and may gain 1 suppression token.
This is the card that I've been waiting for. That unit recovers is godlike on Rebels.
Yeah, it's a little bit more limited than Veer's. But
yeah, but still, I mean, okay, so they introduced Operative Luke with Master of the Force, right? But Commander Luke has been dying for a card like this.
Yeah, I mean,
this is the card for that.
This sort of feels like it gives Commander Luke Master of the Force.
Yeah, in theory, you're going to recover push, trick, and then possibly even stims if you're going that crazy. In theory.
Yeah. That's nothing to mention that it gives Luke Danger Sense.
Danger Sense, which lets him add another defense dice of his own color, which is red. Plus,
I think Danger Sense is only white.
Is it?
I think.
I think it's additional. Is it an additional dice? I'll have to look that up, man. I haven't played a unit with Danger Sense in so long.
Well, that's because up until this point, they haven't been
They haven't been worth looking
overly
at.
great.
Sorry, Jen. Sorry.
No, I think to some extent it's worth talking about. This it gives special forces unit recover. Is this the card that makes um, Bistan good?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's clear. It's clear that this is meant to be played with paths. Like they have, POW in the background. It's sort of in POW and Melshi both in the background there. It doesn't make Bistan good. It helps him immensely. It makes him mobile. My problem with Bistan is that the place that he's most effective is range 3. And I think his worst matchup possibly is against B2s because they have the cover gun, the anti-cover gun.
Yeah.
The blasts like rocket. And so, I mean, even if they do have armor 1, so that his impact works against it, I just think that there's a lot more cover denial floating around now with that B2 arm gun in the mix. I don't know. I guess it could make him better. Like Bistan's issue is not having enough danger sense. His issue is being able to recover and shoot in the same turn.
Sure.
So this giving him the recover through having a pile of suppression seems really good.
For sure. It seems like you definitely can maybe. I think that there's more play to that. Also, I looked up in the rules reference guide. You are right. It appears that Danger Sense just adds 1 additional defense die. So
yeah, so that means Luke just gets an extra save, which is pretty cool.
No, that's stupid.
Yeah, it's stupidly good. Let's be real.
Good. Stupid good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing that happened.
That is a thing that happened.
Yeah. I mean, we knew what the trend here is looking like. So, I guess this card is also in a similar kind of vein to The Last Stand. Pretty good with Sabine. She loves free recover. Right?
Amazing with Sabine. And gives her danger sense on top of her impervious.
Yeah.
So like those might stack together, right? So now I'm gonna rock a Sabine with the shield for sure.
Yeah, I think if you get 2 free recovers, the shield becomes really, really
the
good.
shield and the grappling line less so, but the shield especially with a double recover.
The issue with the grappling line is it costs you an action. It's really powerful. And it's been a game saver, but it would be really nice if it was a free. It'd be way too good if it was a free action. Actually.
Yeah, like if I'm playing Sabine right now, I think the grapple line is really, really awesome. Like it works against so many things. Works against Grievous. It works against Luke. Both types of Luke. It works against Dooku. It has all kinds of good play.
It's definitely really good against the field generally. I actually kind of prefer taking her without the Darksaber and just taking her with like a grappling line and endurance. I think.
Yeah, well, with like all these recovers and with Indomitable in the mix, like heck, you might not even need endurance.
That's true. I think you still might take it just to make sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, 2 recovers plus a card that almost ensures she rallies all her stuff off. Like,
yeah, maybe you do need endurance because Cassian doesn't have the slot for strict.
Yeah, I mean, it's also worth noting that while Cassian's super good, he's still Courage 2.
Yeah, he's still, it's still very possible to panic him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There is that.
So shall we talk about the maybe most unique command card here?
Yeah, this wall of text.
First of all, he's got a 4th command card, and I guess we shouldn't say he's got a 4th command card. The 4th command card actually has K2SO's picture in the top right-hand corner.
Yeah, so it's K2's 1 command card, apparently.
Yeah, so you only can include this in your list if K2 is there. So it's Sacrifice, Cassian Andor, and K2SO get orders. So it's a little bit limited in that capacity. But it says K2SO gains Guardian 4 at the end of K2SO's activation. You may choose another friendly commander or operative unit at range 1 and in line of sight of K2SO. If you do, defeat K2SO, and enemy units cannot perform ranged attacks against the chosen unit until the end of the round.
Wow. Okay.
So there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So this is interesting, right? So they chose Guardian 4 because K2 has 5 health. Imagining. So
Yeah, I
K2 can
mean,
Guardian 4 and fail it all if he wants to. Or he could just Guardian 4 himself to death. But if he does that, then you don't get the add-on effect.
correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
so you have to willfully like defeat him at 1 health in order to actually get this add-on effect.
So I sort of feel like the Guardian 4 is the thing that's the best about this card. Like the clause at the end is like uniquely really, really good. But I
Yeah.
think most of the time you're probably not choosing to kill him unless you have, like, for instance, I actually don't think this is horrible, like on turn 1 for a box grab.
Yeah, actually, you're right, because you just put K2, you sort of just launch him forward, and then
I
you
guess
make the box grab.
you probably want it on turn 2 maybe, but like I don't know. You launch him forward and like so Sabine like lasts into the box on turn 1 and picks it up.
Right.
And K2 has double moved up there, so he's within range 1. And the next turn you're just like, okay, well I play a sacrifice. K2's got Guardian 4, so I guess if they shoot Sabine, he just takes it all. And if they shoot him, I don't know. I guess that's the downside of it. If they shoot him and kill him, you might be in trouble. But if you just eliminate him,
well, that's the thing. They can't actually shoot him because he has incognito.
You're right.
You cannot be attacked by enemy units beyond range 1 unless you have performed an attack or used an objective card action during this game.
Doesn't care if somebody else has done an objective card action. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, he literally just sits there and can't be attacked unless they're within range 1 of him. So all he has to do is sit back at max range of Guardian and wait for the damage to come in.
Yeah, so I guess don't force recover against Sabine K2.
Yeah.
I don't know. So the defeat, that I think that's one of the best uses of the defeat clause, for sure. It's also like making Luke immune for a turn is also super good.
Heck yeah.
But I also think just like popping this card for Guardian 4 and having like R2 and maybe just another Astromech sit behind him, is like your shield's up for a turn. And you probably don't even lose K2.
That's fair.
Because he's a droid trooper, so R2 and the Astromech get to repair him.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
So he's a droid trooper.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So
is this the birth of a new list? Is this double droids?
I think that Cassian, K2, R2, 3PO is probably the base of every Rebel list moving forward. Not every Rebel list. It's every Rebel list that has Cassian in it, I think.
Yeah, I guess thank goodness the operative limit is 2.
Yeah, I think that if you covert ops Cassian in that list, I guess you end up
you'd have to covert. Right? You could covert Cassian and then you make it work. Yeah.
But that's actually really interesting. A feature only commander, you just kind of like transferred you can kind of make your orders a little better in that capacity. But yeah, I sort of feel like the place to start here is either Cassian, Sabine, K2, R2, or Cassian, Luke, K2, R2. Both of those seem really strong, and they seem kind of affordable, frankly. For 4 activations, I think it clocks in um, like somewhere under 400 points, which is not terrible considering they're all heroes.
Cassian, Sabine, K2, you're already maxed out there.
Oh,
right?
You're right.
With
You're
your
right.
operatives.
You
Yeah.
can't do
So
that.
I think you
Yeah,
can still do Cassian, Sabine, K2. I think that's an easy play.
yeah.
Because I think
But
I think your point about sacrifice on boxes is so good. I just can't see it. Because like if they can bid you down and force recover, like how do you respond? Like Sabine is quite literally immune for like a turn.
Yeah.
Or more. Like
yeah, I know. I'm not. I mean, I guess like you really just have to, if you're playing against a list like that, you have to kind of place your boxes somewhere where it's going to force a fight over the other boxes. I think.
yeah, you got to you got to do something where you are threatening not just the middle. Because if the middle is the only goal, then you're kind of just screwed.
Yeah, I mean, sacrifice. It's a very unique, and it's a very unique effect that definitely has the practical application of being extremely game breaking. Like, I don't think we've had an effect that's anywhere near as close to as powerful as the effect that card gives in this game.
Yeah. Like I Am a Jedi is one thing because it's centered around a 200 point operative.
Yeah, and it's still super limiting as far as like the 2 units you pick can't shoot you, but everything else still can.
Right, and you're also giving up your own strongest attack.
Yeah,
because Luke is godlike in melee. But sacrifice is different. Like K2, I mean, his offense is probably still fine because of the blaster pistol, which we'll circle around back to in a moment here. But you're right; it's definitely a new level. It's very unique and very strong on its face.
All of these cards are. I feel confident saying that Cassian and K2 do not have a bad command card, or even a mediocre command card.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they're all winners for different reasons.
Yeah, I think his 1-pip does what you want a 1-pip to do. It might not be as splashy as Son of Skywalker or Serve, but it's still effectively 2 to 4 attacks.
It's still really good.
If you're able to kind of live the dream and gunslinger twice in a turn, man, good on you.
But I mean that's good because it's droppable, right? Because you could drop it for other things, gives you that flexibility. Like you could take Crackshot, but you also don't have to, because maybe you want to double up on Luke's 1-pips or something like that, or maybe you want to do like I don't know, Explosions Ambush or something like that, so you get double Sabine targeting.
He feels like a real Swiss Army knife, frankly. Like with a configurable gun, and they talked about loadout a bit, where you get to kind of exchange upgrades and stuff. He seems like you pretty much like sit down at a game and you're like, okay, well, this is the mode Cassian's going to take this game,
right?
And you get to choose, which is really cool.
All right, we haven't even talked about loadout, although we did talk about loadout last week. Because speaking of Swiss Army knife, right? Like now you've got, not only is it a Swiss Army knife with command cards, it's also a Swiss Army knife with his upgrades.
Yeah,
because when you deploy, you may swap any of your equipped upgrades with your set aside. Like that's, so he's just got the tools, man. He's like you say, he's got what you need.
Yeah, I mean, I generally don't super agree with the like upgrade suggestions that a lot of these articles have, but they're in this one. They're like, you can put Overwatch him, and you can quickly just change your plans for offensive push. And I think that yes,
that's crazy good. The fact that you can change trainings.
Yeah, it's really good.
So like you're probably always rocking, Hunter or whatever, or dangerous or duck and cover, but then you have like the ability to flex.
So here's a question that I have about this, because I think Han runs into this a little too. Like, because originally people were like, "Oh, duck and cover might be okay on Han because he's got a low profile, right?" But he's also got courage too. Cassian's got danger sense, but also has courage too. Unlike Jin, he also does not have dauntless, which is relevant.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that danger sense is a thing that you take on him, or do you think you skip danger sense and just go straight to like Hunter?
I mean, it depends on how you want to run him. Like, I think he gets a lot of value out of danger sense when he's in the thick of things.
Sure.
And I mean, I think the best way to use it is to go in there, take a bunch of suppression and then last stand your way out of it with Indomitable. I think that was
Yeah,
kind of the
or
idea.
you could just recover it off with volunteer, I guess,
Or
too.
just recover it with volunteer, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you. So the first slot's like offensive push, Overwatch, and the second one is like Hunter / Danger Sense, probably, right? Like if you're gonna take, I don't know what's Danger Sense these days for. I don't know. I think did it come down in the points update? Not Danger Sense, Duck and
Duck and
Cover.
cover, yeah.
What
Duck
I
and
meant.
cover is 4, yeah.
Yeah. Um.
So
So if
Overwatch,
you,
offensive push, duck and cover, they're all 4.
yeah, I think you probably take a 4 point slot, and then like you take a Hunter Duck and Cover alternate slot. Like if you lose 2 points on an upgrade, whatever, you're paying for flexibility.
For sure.
Um, uh, so let's talk about K2.
Yeah.
We haven't really like talked about his unit card because we haven't seen it before today.
Here's what I want to know. So Armor 1 doesn't work with Guardian, right? Because it's while defending.
Yeah, so Armor 1 happens during the
Dodge and
modified
cover,
dice
right?
step, I'm pretty sure, or dodge and cover. Yeah, it definitely happens before Guardian. So first of all, like you can't use an armor. Like I think the only unit in the game that, because there's very limited units that have Guardian, but the only unit in the game that can use like cover or armor or dodge tokens against hits their Guardian is Kenobi.
Yeah, I think that's an Obi-Wan only ability.
Yeah. Um,
So Armor 1 only works if he's being attacked directly,
Correct.
which
It's
hardly ever comes up because of Incognito.
it's kind of interesting. K2 is the only unit. Well, I guess I shouldn't say the only unit, because technically you can give units Guardian with General Grievous's command card, but um, he's the only like unit that kind of, I'm going to put it in air quotes, has Guardian natively, but can also be Guardianed off of most of the time. So like on the non-sacrifice turns, you can, Guardian off K2 with Chewie if you wanted. And in that circumstance, if they're shooting at K2, the armor keyword does take effect, which is interesting.
Right. So I mean, K2 defensively is Rex, right? Because he's 5 health, 2 courage with a red dice with no surge.
Yeah, I mean, I think armor counts for a lot there.
It does.
You
Armor
know,
is essentially having a nimble dodge on all the time, but the disadvantage, of course, is that impact, affects you.
well, so impact does affect you, but it still cancels a hit most of the time, right?
Yeah,
So
you'll still cancel a hit because dice pools are large enough that that's going to be the case.
yeah, so I mean, yes, but I think that most of the time this is essentially like it's just cover 1 that goes up to cover 3, basically.
Right.
And frankly, most of the time he doesn't need it because he's got a sweet keyword that I'm not sure we've seen before, incognito, right? I don't think
Right, which
anything else.
we briefly discussed it earlier, but I think he's the first unit with this keyword is incognito.
And incognito says you cannot be attacked by enemy units beyond range 1 unless you have performed an attack or used an objective card action during this game.
Yeah, so K2 is he basically can't be damaged until you let him be damaged. Or until
Yeah.
someone moves into range of you.
Um, yeah, this is really interesting. It seems sort of non-interactive.
Yeah.
Which I'm not a super fan of. But He's also 70 points.
Fair.
He seems like a really good 70 points. He's also gated behind Cassian, so I don't think that. I think you're going to see a K2 in pretty much every Cassian list, but I'm not sure that we're going to see Cassian in every list. So I think that that's probably okay. I don't know. How do you generally feel about Incognito? Is it?
Yeah, it's troublesome because I'm sure they'd love to shoot K2 at any chance they get. And of course, you want K2 to be able to do his stuff. And obviously, he's going to draw a lot of hate, right? Because they know what he can do later in the game if they're aware of his sacrifice card. And so, of course, he's only got 5 wounds. He's kind of sniper bait.
Yeah, I mean, armor helps him out a little bit there.
It does, but it may not quite be enough.
Yeah, I mean, if he's in heavy against a standard sniper, they literally need crits.
Yeah, they can only just roll crits if he's in cover,
which is pretty good. He's also got 4 red die surge to crit melee attack.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's is that the same as Chewie's?
No, Chewie's got. Yeah, it is the same as Chewie's. Oh my gosh, it is. Except Chewie can take tenacity and K2 can't.
That's fair. Yeah.
Still, if you don't interact with him until he gets in the range of one of you, then he just charges you, or not charges you, but just walks into melee with you and thumps you with a bunch of red dice.
Yeah, I mean, Chewie would be a lot better too if he had Incognito.
That's also true.
Right?
Yeah, so Chewie's got 9 health.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. If Chewie got in there with 9 health and I don't know.
Yeah.
He'd be real good.
He would be a lot better if you couldn't attack your Guardian battery, but the thing is, K2 has to do a very specific timing.
He does.
And it also requires a command card as opposed to just being baked in.
Yeah. It's sort of unclear to me, on its face, these guys seem exceptional.
For sure. We need to circle around to this blaster, by the way.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. I keep on forgetting he has a range attack.
This is so this is interesting gun. So it says this is Jin's SE14 blaster, which is thematically it's in K2's hand. She gifted this to K2, in the movie, and it's 5 white, which is stellar on a surge to crit platform. While Generoso is in your army, reduce this card's points by 5. So if you do take Jin, this gets a discount. Has Pierce 1, awesome already. Has Suppressive, even awesomer. But the thing is, it's 5 white on a surge to crit platform, and it's got range 2, so you could easily hit the lottery on this gun on K2.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically Bosk's attack at range 2, right? Because, I mean, let's get real. Does the red die in Bosk's gun, nobody really cares that it is almost always a hit. It's the fact that it's just an extra die to roll crits with,
Right, so... I mean, if you don't care about those extra hit facings, then it is functionally the same gun, right?
Yeah.
If you discount the extra hit facings.
I don't know how true that actually is. I think that makes it consistent when you're not firing into cover, right?
Right.
But this is definitely, yeah. I mean, for 5 points, it's probably. So do you just auto it? So this is a big if because I'm not sure this quite gets Jin to where she needs to be. But if Jin is in your army, do you just take this gun over her other? I don't even know what the normal one is called.
Her free gun.
Yeah, do you pay the 5 points to give her this instead?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I think if K2 is in your list, you always give this to him because he doesn't natively have a ranged attack, right?
Yeah, this gun just shines on K2. It's so good on him, and it fills in a gap for him. Jin, I think her rifle config is really important. But the thing is, it doesn't. It's awkward, right? Because Jin doesn't have any offensive enhancement other than Rebellious.
Yeah,
right? Her offense isn't quite there. But I mean, when we're looking at these things, we're looking for value, right? So getting a 5-die attack for 10 additional points, I mean, that's like a no-brainer, right? Like, that just seems really good.
Yeah, and being able to like kind of pick your timing, because like incognito just like allows you to hover at like range 2 to 3 until you're ready to kind of, you know, throw down.
Yeah.
It seems pretty good. I will say that um, I think the fact that K2 doesn't have charge like Chewie normally does is kind of a big reason to take this pistol.
Definitely. And I'm also gonna say, like, with incognito, right? It's you can't be attacked by enemy units beyond range 1 unless you performed an attack yourself, or unless you
Yeah.
like picked up a box or something or done a VAP. Um, rebels have a high activation count already, so is it possible to just like get a differential so high that they can never actually shoot K2 unless they get close to him? Like, that's completely feasible, right? You just go last with K2, or near to last, because you probably have an even bigger last behind this. But like,
in that you just always keep them beyond range 1.
yeah, you just keep them beyond range 1 and you keep them incog, and they can never get close, because if they get close, you chop them up with like a Luke or some other character.
So I guess the question I would have is, what benefit are you getting out of keeping him kind of out of combat for that long?
The inability to be shot. Because
Sure, but like,
because you're running sacrifice.
okay,
So you just have more health. You have more health, plus you have the ability to do your little special thing if you guardian down to 1 or whatever.
So essentially, I guess what you're suggesting is that K2 is a 70-point Luke hit point battery.
Yeah, or I mean, really anything.
Okay.
Hey, you know what? We run 800 points to Luke. We might as well get honest about it.
Yeah, no,
it's always 800 points to Luke, man. It always comes back to that.
I don't disagree, frankly. Even like K2 plus art, I guess you can't throw
It's also
them
just the
in.
ability to do damage without taking return fire is just strong in and of itself, because you're doing piercing crits, and your opponent doesn't have enough activations to actually kill the thing that's doing piercing crits. Because
Yeah, I mean, so it's not just this round, right? It's during this game. So
during this game. Oh, derp. Okay,
yeah,
never mind.
Okay.
So you can put it in the right spot and do it without being injured.
Yeah. I think I understand where you're going with the high activation thing now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like, once he's shot this game, like, he's on the table, right?
Yeah, he's on the table, but you can keep him off the table as long as you need to.
Yeah, and I mean, Rebelists are really good at that right now, right? Like,
yeah, they're just really good. They're just, we're gonna run 11 to 12 and do that sort of shenanigans.
I do think that it's interesting, and it's possible that HQ uplinks make this not relevant, but Cassian and K2's command cards are definitely not overly synergistic with Tauntaun units.
They're not. That's a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm bringing it up. I mean, like, all of the text, like, specifically refers to commanders, operatives, or special forces, and all of the text also only goes down on things if Cassian himself issues the order. So
Right.
you can't actually like usurp the effects with HQ uplink like you could for like No Time for Sorrows or My Ally is the Force. So I think that's just my hope here is that this kind of spawns a new rebel archetype or brings rebel infantry kind of back into the game. Although it might just be an 800 points of Luke list, I suppose. So yeah, I don't know. I think that My hope is that they spawn a new list archetype, frankly. Whether that's the 800 points of Luke or Rebel Infantry again. I would really love to see like Jin, Cassian, K2, like Pathfinder list be a thing that you can bring and be successful with.
Yeah, like thematically, all these cards work well with their sort of movie units. I mean, that's what I
Yeah,
would love ultimately. I think, hopefully a goal maybe would be to have, movie thematic armies that really work together.
yeah,
I have a far off dream one day somewhere in the far future that, along the lines of like Evan's Hoth army, they'll release a, General Rican that goes next to Leia, for example, that commands T-47s with the same deftness that Leia commands Tauntaun armies.
yeah. I
I
mean,
would
I
love
think
that.
I think the one thing that the Rebels are really missing in their kind of suite is a commander that makes vehicles good. You know,
Yeah.
I think Imperials sort of have that. I think it's kind of questionable to say that Veers makes vehicles super good. Like his command cards are fine on them, right?
Yeah. I think like Imperial vehicles were already good. Veers just gets that extra little bit of sauce there with the recovery options,
Yeah,
but he's
like
not
some
totally
extra dodge
necessary.
tokens.
Like
Yeah,
look, if you don't care about his command cards, you can easily run an Imperial officer with binoculars and run a double
yeah,
heavy. And then it's like,
totally.
okay, whatever.
Um,
Because pin down's the strong neutral, right? That all the Imperial vehicles rely on.
yeah, I mean, pin down much better than evasive. What was it? Evasive tactics, evasive
Evasive
maneuvers.
maneuvers, yeah.
Yeah.
It's way better.
Um, so I think that that's generally just kind of how that goes. But yeah, I think Riken would be a cool like uh, person to put that ability on, and I think just generally um, seeing kind of more commanders come out that fit these different roles is going to be a really interesting way to expand and adapt the game. I cannot wait to see the rest of Iden's cards.
Yeah,
Hopefully that spoiler is this week.
that's going to come
So
soon.
yeah,
Dude, I'm so ready. I really do hope that the dream comes true and that Cassian and K2 kind of inspire a different style because it's not that Tons are boring. It's just that you know I don't say this often. Um, there's a difference between a faction being overpowered and a faction being broken, right? And um, Rebels, I don't know, man. Like it's tough not to say Rebels are broken because right now I view the Rebel Trooper, and I think a lot of folks are starting to view the Rebel Trooper as a tax. If people could get away without taking cores in the Rebel faction, they wouldn't right now. I'm almost
so
certain.
here's my question that kind of fundamentally sits behind that is that if Rebel Core units, like clearly Tauntauns have made people feel like Rebel Core units are obsolete,
Yeah, and
but
Shores.
and Shores. Um, do you think that people just swap into like if Tauntauns get like peeled back or whatever in some fashion? Do you think people just swap to Hero Hammer Rebel lists and continue to do the same thing?
I think that'll be a definite like consideration. Um, I don't know, man. The 20A does give me a little hope, and as
Yeah, I
you
mean
know,
it's really
rebellions are
good.
built on hope. Wait, sorry, you're saying?
Um, no, I mean it's the DLT is really good. I mean, I think functionally the question is, to me, the issue with Rebel Troopers has never been their offense, right? Like that's always been what they've been good at.
Right.
Uh, so if their offense is not the problem, it's their defense, and does the DLT really fix that?
It doesn't because their durability isn't altered in any way. Like,
And they're more expensive at that point,
right, and they're
right?
more expensive, exactly. So it's like, we're caught in the horns of this dilemma, right? You've got Empire and clones surging on defense with their red dice from various sources. and you got droids who can also surge on defense sometimes, who also have 3 additional wounds most of the time.
Yeah, so I guess where I'm sitting on this is it okay that there's a faction in the game that leans into its units that are not core units? I sort of feel like if there's a faction that does that, it should be the rebels.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and you know, the question is that generally okay? I don't know. I mean, a lot of people have invested a lot of money into core units, right? So
yeah. I'm sure I'm
there's
not
I
the only
think
person sitting on 6 boxes of Z6s or whatever, the equivalent
right.
thereof.
So
Because
that's
6D was a thing, right, for a long time, because it was the only thing to play. And then fleets
yeah.
were really good for a hot minute, and then people stopped playing fleets because range is king. So
It's yeah. I mean, yes, range is king. Tauntauns essentially have like range
yeah, Tauns
4.
Tauns have range 5 because they're hella fast, and they have range 2.
Yeah. So I mean,
So
that's just kind of how that goes.
yeah,
So
force projection is really crucial in this game, especially on a 3x6 table. Less so on a 3x3, which is why I play Wookiees on 3x3s, because Wookiees are actually really good in that format because their health starts to matter a lot more because they can get where they need to go quickly.
yeah, man, I really wish like I don't know, Wookiees need to come down in price or something. Like
I
at
agree.
110, at 110 they do Tauntauns do everything Wookiees do but better, and they do more stuff.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, it's just a fact, man. And like the Wookiees, they have 12 wounds, but they lose models faster than Tawns because they only have 3 health per model.
yeah.
They also don't surge on defense. They also don't generate their own dodges.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing though is that like 8 health is not that different than 12 health once you factor in the fact that taunts surge on defense and they have the dodge tokens. Like,
Yeah,
I think when it comes down to longevity, it's very possible that the taunts not only are harder to kill a single model, but have just a higher effective health pool over the course of the game due to, if you generate 12 dodge tokens with the Tauntauns, um, that's the equivalent health pool of the Wookiees,
yeah, exactly.
right? Like, and that's
You're
like,
already setting yourself up to generate more defensive value there because
yeah.
it's just baked
So,
in.
right, like I don't know, and that doesn't include cover and all that stuff, obviously, but
Right.
like,
Now they
um,
can't get to a 9 dice ceiling, but I bet you they average higher because RAM fixes the dice.
yeah, I mean, RAM is roughly equivalent to 2 aim tokens.
Yeah, so you know, action economy galore. It's not like people say, "Oh, I'm going to do 7 actions." It's actually more like 11 when you factor in all the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, RAM is essentially 2. So
Agile's 2 more. So it's actually 9. Excuse me, not 11.
yeah, but still,
Still,
I mean,
like 9 actions
there,
is
there
pretty damn nice.
there are 200 point units in this game that don't come
Yeah,
close
they
to that
can't do
action
that,
efficiency.
right?
I think the original Vader article that I put out that talked about like action efficiency and stuff. I think you can get to like 5 or 6 in a turn with him, which is like really good, but it's not anywhere close to 9.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Um,
gotta say, implacable double force push is pretty dope.
yeah,
I still think it rules. Like it's really
I mean,
nice.
I think he's um, he's decent now.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know if he's in the playable bucket yet, but um, he's definitely more fringe than he was before. I
yeah.
think.
He's a little more fringy now.
I gotta say, I think Operative is a lot better than Commander. There's a lot of people that don't believe me.
Yeah, people. I don't know why they don't believe you. It's like, and I played against Commander the other day. And I'm like, oh man, if that was operative, I'd be so dead right here.
Yeah,
I literally had that thought cross my mind.
yeah.
It's like, well, actually, because I'm faster than you, I'll just run away and win the game because I have speed too, and you don't.
That's I think the fundamental issue with Commander as opposed to Operative is just the zoning
Yeah,
is
it
not,
was a, it
not
was an
nearly as good.
elimination game on skirmish, and everybody had speed 2. So as soon as we both offed 3 units from each other's armies, I literally just ran away to do secret mission with R2D2. I just won the game because nothing could catch R2 by then.
Yeah. I mean, if you can, I love stranding R2 up on top of a building with
Vader's might.
That's like one of my new favorite tricks. But it's also a lot easier to do if you can do 2 speed 2 moves in a turn. So
that's like the biggest reason to run Blast Off now is Vader's might.
Yeah, I mean it's like a real problem I've found for the rebel lists that are running R2 but not Blast Off. It's like, okay, R2 really wants line of sight blocking terrain, but not against Vader.
True. So. I mean, if you really want to VM my 35-point droid, I mean, be my guest.
Yeah. I mean, it kills an activation, right?
Yeah.
But we've gone down the rabbit hole. Kyle's not here to reel us in.
Yeah, Kyle's not here to reel us in. We can continue salting for the next 2 hours if we wanted to.
Yeah. So, do we have anything to add on K2, SO, and Cassian Andor?
Other than that, I'm looking forward to playing these guys immensely, and that I'm also looking forward to seeing what they have in Iden's pack as well.
Yeah.
Other than that, man, I'm just, this is great because, Worlds is going to happen in a couple of weeks here, right? And after Worlds is over, the game is completely open again because there are so many new things. There's 3 new objectives. There's so much like width now.
Yeah, it sort of feels like it's going to be a reboot to some extent. Hopefully, Tawns and Shores get adjusted in that time frame.
Yeah.
But I do think to some extent the game is kind of being rebooted in that we're going to have a whole new set of just doubling basically the number of condition, objective, and deployment cards that are in the game is already a huge change. But there's a lot of unique units like Padme and Cad and, Cassian and Iden, and the ARCs and the BX droids are
BX droids. Yeah, there's so much new stuff coming our way.
It's, I think with two more factions that are legitimately competitive, I know a lot of people maybe we'll have an argument about that, whether CIS and GAR are competitive right now. I personally feel like they're not. But I think the Sniper Strike teams really changed that. Fundamentally. So
once they get strike teams.
Yeah, I think once they have strike teams, they're immediately in the running for being completely playable. In a top tier way.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I guess let's wrap this show up. We're the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Mike.
I'm David.
And Kyle is somewhere else. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Join us next week for another episode of the Notorious Scoundrels.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.